Hi, I'm now going to go through a literature component 1 paper, which is a bit of a mixed bag. Some of the answers are awarded higher bands than others. And this is Romeo and Juliet and Mammoth's Wood, and it was a theme of war. So just starting off with Romeo and Juliet then. The extract question for Romeo and Juliet was, where Romeo and Juliet first meet, and Romeo is asking if he can kiss Juliet, and despite his unworthiest hand. So it's very much based on a love extract. This was the paper that I marked, so when I'm giving you the feedback here, I am thinking of it from the point of view of somebody who marked 300 of these in the summer. So I might be being a bit more harsh, I think, but we'll see how we get on. So, an audience would be very into the play at this point, as it is when Romeo and Juliet meet, and from the prologue they know from this point on the play gets exciting. From the extract we can see Romeo is infatuated with Juliet from only seeing her for the first time. The quotation, "If I profane with my unworthiest hand," this highlights how Romeo sees himself as below Juliet. The word unworthiest illustrates this, as it is associated with not being good enough. Okay, so you can see the scope here to maybe be a little bit more organised with punctuation to help the ideas be a bit clearer, but essentially there's some really good analysis here. There is an understanding about why this point matters. So when the fact that they first meet, so they know that it's going to start being significant. Significant is a better word than exciting, because significant critically thinks about why it matters rather than how the audience feels. Exciting is still a valid word though. But this is, I think, what makes this thoughtful, is that they're thinking about the fact that in the prologue, we obviously know from that Romeo and Juliet are going to die. So it's really important, and we were looking for this as examiners, that you think about what's already come before the extract. So make sure you always think about that. What came before the extract, and therefore why is this moment more significant because of what came before? So because the prologue, obviously we find out that they're going to die, and this is going to be really dramatic. We know that the meeting is a significant moment. He then goes on to say that Romeo is infatuated with Juliet, which is a very valid inference from seeing her for the first time, and then he links it to a quotation. However, I would argue that this isn't the best quotation to prove that that Romeo is infatuated with her. And I think you have to be careful with the word infatuated, because just of how he is with Rosaline as a point of contrast. Maybe we'll speak about that in a bit. So, but still, it's good to select a quotation from the text. This highlights how he sees himself as below Juliet. Yes, so that shows an understanding of the quotation. And then they've picked out the word unworthiest, illustrates as it's associated with not being good enough. So we're starting to explore language there, so that's really good. It gives the audience the impression that Juliet is something special. Yes, exactly. It really does. So that's a lovely inference. Something he has never seen before. He is stunned. Yeah, brilliant. That that he thinks that she is unworthy of him. He's stunned by her. That all is valid inferences, isn't it? Also, the quotation, "This holy shrine, the gentle sin is this," reinforces the idea. That's lovely. So that's cross-referencing the idea that she is above him. Yes. Yeah. And then they've gone on to explore this language, which is essential. Really, you should be analysing holy shrine. Yep. So he speaks to her in poetic language, which could be his way of expressing his love to her. Yes. You could talk about the idea of verse and how that is usually used for love. Holy shrine has religious connotations. Lovely analysis of language there. And it's something we worship. Romeo almost worships Juliet. Yeah, really good understanding of the language. She is like a guiding light for Romeo. She will show him the way. This is a change. Right, perfect. Really good. This is what I was waiting for. This is a change from Romeo's attitude at the beginning of the play, as prior to this scene, we know he was in love with a girl who didn't love him back. Courtly love. Due to this, Romeo was sad and depressed. He acted childish and wanted to be left alone. So we've got a really nice link to previous parts of the play now to show why this moment causes a different response in the audience. He cursed Cupid and wished to have never fallen in love. So here we've got some really good understanding of other parts of the play. Now, you need to be quite brief when you're doing this in the extract, because you need to have a really good coverage of the extract, and you've only got 20 minutes. So he could maybe just shorten this a little bit and just said, this contrasts to the Act 1, where we see depressed, morose, melancholic would be a good word, because that sort of summarises him quite well. Melancholic Romeo, who is pining over Rosaline. Thereby, this emphasises here just how impressive Juliet must be, because he's just forgot all about this woman who's been making him miserable. And I think that's the key point, that, you know, it really emphasises how much he's in love with Juliet. But they do go on to speak a bit more about Rosaline here, so let's have a look. The noun sin suggests that he sees her as precious for him, as he is doing wrong by falling in love with her. Yeah, Romeo's drastic change could either imply that he is like all typical men, and that he only values women for their looks or for pleasure. However, it could also imply Rosaline was just an infatuation, however Juliet is true love. That's really nice, and what makes that really nice is this evaluative however, where they're considering two interpretations of Romeo. Okay, now to get band 5, you could go on to say, actually make a decision between those two, which one is most likely given the rest of the play. But again, very briefly, because you've only got 20 minutes. Juliet replies to Romeo, also in poetic form, indicating she has fallen for him and is expressing her love. So this is really nice, because this is an analysis of form, and this idea that they're both speaking in the same form suggests that they're both feeling the same way. So that he's analysing how the structure reflects their feelings, which is very, very nice. The quotation, for saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch, and palm to palm is holy palmer's kiss. An audience can infer from this that Juliet wants Romeo to kiss her. She has never loved anyone, so this is a big step for her. She knows she shouldn't confess her love to him, however she still does. She goes against the norms expected of her from the Shakespearean society. That's a little bit waffly, and maybe doesn't, I'm not convinced at the moment that this student fully understands that quotation from what they've written. So that's something that you might want to think about, is just making sure, am I just pinning down what's suggested here by this quotation? Yes, she does want Romeo to kiss her, but here actually what she's saying is, you know, if you do kiss me, you are undermining me, because saints have hands and they kiss by palm to palm. So even just holding my hand is like kissing. She also uses words with religious connotations. This is a bit better because it's sort of focusing on the quotation now, such as saints, pilgrims, holy, a semantic field of religion. Religion is something which shows dedication and trust. The use of these words from both Romeo and Juliet shows that they are dedicated. Perhaps, yes. But again, you could be evaluative and weigh up different ideas there, that Juliet's wanting to appear to be coy, perhaps, for example. An audience knows they have kissed when Romeo says, notice there is a reference to the audience, but there's not, I don't think there's been any reference to Shakespeare so far. And that's something that's maybe missing compared to the Inspector Calls for Christmas Carols that we've looked at. An audience knows they have kissed when Romeo says, thus from my lips, by thine, my sin is purged. They must feel strongly against each other as they kissed. Yes. That's a straightforward point to make those. That would be like band 3. An audience would know them kissing is a bad thing, and now everything should go downhill, as from the prologue they know they are starkest lovers and they are fated. This foreshadows later events in the play, such as their death. I feel like they've already proven their understanding of that earlier on in the answer. Maybe it wasn't worth repeating, but the examiner has ticked it. It is correct. The references to the noun and verb purged, you need to make a decision. To purge is a verb. Indicate this also, they have connotations of negative things. When Romeo realizes Juliet is a Capulet, which is his family's enemy, he is startled. Yes. But that completely ignores where the word purged is used. Now I'm not sure that he really understood the word purged there. You know, he's saying he's purged, he wants to be purged of his sins, he wants to purge of himself by kissing her because she's so lovely, if I remember that rightly. Yeah, my sin is purged, so my sin is released. Yeah, I don't think they quite understood purge that. When Romeo realizes Juliet is a Capulet, which is his family's enemy, he is startled. That is correct, but we could do with the quotation because the quotation was in the extract. Both families, Montagues and Capulets, have been in a family feud for years. The quotation, "Oh, by dear account, my life is my foe's depth." Right, good, there's your quotation. Shows Romeo doesn't know now how to react. He has bad luck. The heaven and stars are not with him. The interjection, "oh," reinforces the tremendous upset this has caused him, as it is too late, he is already in love with her. Good. Right, so they have there analysed the entire extract. There's no main part of the extract that they've missed off. A lot of students last year didn't cover that last bit where Romeo found out that Juliet was a Capulet, and they lost marks because of that, because they didn't cover the whole thing, and that's a massively important moment in the extract. Okay, so this answer is given into band 5. I think primarily because of that evaluation aspect of it. That's a band 5 skill, and obviously things like foreshadows later events, the links to other parts of the play, which really help to make it a critical response. The lack of cohesiveness, perhaps in terms of lack of punctuation and things, maybe stops it getting full marks, but doesn't really have much more impact than that. Spag is not marked on this question, and it actually made some really good valid points about the characters, but that evaluation is really what makes it the band 5. Okay, moving on to the essay question then. The essay question this year was on Tybalt, and obviously Tybalt dies in Act 3, so it was hard to cover the entire play, and the one way you could do that was to think about how Tybalt's death influences and impacts Romeo and Juliet in the rest of the play. And that's something you should always be considering. I think, though, so far we've had Mercutio and Tybalt, so hopefully this year you'll get a character who actually survives till the end, or a theme. So let's have a look at the essay question. This is out of 20, and then there's 5 marks for Spag as well. Tybalt is a character who has a huge part in the play. He is presented in many different parts at the beginning of the play. Right, that's just waffle. There's nothing specifically said there, so you need to be pinning down something very specific at the beginning, and you need to be referring to Shakespeare. Shakespeare uses Tybalt throughout the play as a source of antagonism, or as a source of conflict, for example. At the street fight, so this is good because it's tracking the play. So this is the first time we see Tybalt. At the street fight, he is presented as someone who is very frustrated and carries a lot of anger with him. He is ready to fight at the street with the Montagues as he tells them to pull out their swords. So we've got reference to the text, which again would be completely from memory. This might not be spot on, doesn't matter. They're still trying to reference the text specifically. Both Montagues and Capulets have an ongoing family feud, and he sees the Montagues as below him. Yes, very true. Inference, tick. Benvolio tries to stop the fight. He doesn't agree with fighting. He believes in peace. His name reinforces it means goodwill. This isn't linked to Tybalt, so it's not particularly focused. However, Tybalt is so ignorant and doesn't stop that he even draws Benvolio and Montague into the fight, although he has good intentions. That's really good. That's really critical. So maybe to make that a little bit more cohesive, we could say Benvolio is presented by Shakespeare here as a juxtaposition to Tybalt. Benvolio is a man of peace. Put up thy swords could be a quotation. Yet despite this, Tybalt still manages to draw him into the fight, highlighting how persuasive or impetuous, which is what they've said here, Tybalt can be. So just thinking about how you can make all of that a little bit more cohesive so that it's constantly focused on Tybalt, and analysing Benvolio in the context of Tybalt. How is Benvolio used to shape our response to Tybalt? This is a beautiful point, though. That is really, really insightful to think that actually we highlight how pure and peaceful Benvolio is, yet he's still drawn into it. Tybalt is very impetuous. He doesn't think before he does things. He believes violence is the answer to everything. Violence begets violence in this play. Yes, but this is all a bit random. Why has Shakespeare used him to be like this? This is the moral Tybalt goes by. Yes, that's nice. That's a nice phrase. We then see Tybalt again at the Capulet Party. So just before moving on, really we need to be saying why. Why has Shakespeare highlighted in the very first scene how violent and sort of unforgiving Tybalt is? How does that prepare us for his reaction to Romeo crashing the ball? How does that impact on Romeo and Juliet as a whole? And what is Shakespeare suggesting about violence, about morals here, about commitment to a family feud? Okay, so we see Tybalt again at the Capulet's party. Once again, he is furious when he sees Romeo at the party. His initial thoughts is to fight with him. However, Capulet restrains him. Yes, he does, which angers him even more. Yes, but this is all plot. So at the Capulet Party, Shakespeare presents Tybalt, or builds on his previous presentation of Tybalt as someone who is easily angered. When he sees Romeo at the party, we realise he only doesn't fight him because of Lord Capulet, and Tybalt perhaps shows a lack of respect to his owner here, or perhaps that he is loyal to his owner because he does obey Capulet. Capulet tells him to enjoy the party and even refers to Romeo as someone who is honourable and says how he is looked up at in Verona. He tells Tybalt to respect him. Tybalt, however, disagrees with this and says, "In stock and honour of my kin, to strike him dead, I hold it not a sin." That's well remembered, because at so far I was thinking this student doesn't remember this scene very well, like the way they've phrased this here. Tells him to enjoy the party, suggests maybe a lack of remembering of specifics of this scene and how they're presented, but that really does pin it down. That's a really nice quotation. This illustrates he has nothing but pure hatred for all Montagues. Yes, to kill a Montague who, by honouring his family name, it's like an accomplishment. Yes, but also, well, they've got it here, the noun sin has religious connotations, which could suggest Tybalt is religious. He is saying how to kill a Montague is not a sin, it's not wrong. That just shows understanding of the language. It doesn't show an understanding that he thinks that it's not a sin to kill a Montague, because he almost believes that he would be serving God by doing that. So when he says that he is honouring his family name, it's almost like he's also honouring God, because it's not a sin. That'd be something you'd need to pin down there. The rhyming couplets of kin and sin is strange. It's like he isn't serious, contrast, because he is deadly serious. He sees Romeo as nothing. He does. That's a little bit unclear. I think the key thing here is that Tybalt, there was a lot of nice inferences about Tybalt and Capulet and how he honours Capulet, and that's maybe a redeeming feature, that he's loyal to his family. However, you know, how has Capulet contributed to this hate, and what could Capulet be doing more to rein Tybalt in? So you might think critically about how Lord Capulet affects our response to Tybalt, how Lord Capulet perhaps gives us an avenue to feel sympathy for Tybalt, or at least understanding for his character, or put some of the responsibility onto Capulet himself. He is also presented as a typical man of the Shakespearean era. You don't really get any marks for understanding the Shakespearean era, but it will be embedded into your understanding of the play. He always made puns and sexual innuendo and didn't value women. I'm wondering whether he's thinking more about Mercutio here, but maybe not. It was a patriarchal society. The men were the dominant sex. There's no marks to be gained there, really. That is true. But that doesn't link to... He's not really made any valid comments about Tybalt himself. Love was not separated from sexual desire. He was a foil to Romeo. That's nice. Very true. Juxtaposed him. Yeah, that's good. That's critical. That's lovely analysis. Romeo believed in peace, not violence. He valued women and love. True. Romeo described Juliet as a teacher who guides him and is above him, as she doth teach the torches to burn bright. That's a lovely quotation. This highlights his true love. Tybalt would mock Romeo for this. Yes, that's true. It's true, but it doesn't feel focused. So I don't know, that Romeo is someone who's driven by love and Tybalt is someone who's driven by hate. That's why they're a foil. That's why he's a foil for him. That's why they juxtapose each other, and that maybe could be pinned down a little bit more. And therefore, does the fact that Romeo beats Tybalt suggest that love will always overcome violence? That would get the answer into a strong band 5. We come across Tybalt again when he challenges Romeo. However, Romeo refuses to fight. Mercutio then decides to fight as he believes Romeo is being cowardly. Tybalt is happy to fight and draws his sword. That's all narrative. So there's no analysis there. There's just, this is what happens in the play, which is band 2. From the prologue, we know Romeo kills Tybalt, therefore his confidence is rather strange and shows he is presented as fearless. It's not strange to Tybalt because he doesn't know what's going to happen. However, yes, he is very fearless. He kills Mercutio and feels no sympathy. He then fights Romeo. He is unaware Romeo is married to his cousin and Juliet. This is dramatic irony. Yes, that is true, but that could maybe lead in Act 3 Scene 1, Shakespeare exploits the dramatic irony created by Romeo and Juliet's marriage, which Tybalt is unaware of. His actions in the scene therefore make him seem blah blah blah. Yeah. If he knew, maybe he would act differently or even be more furious. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So nice speculation there. Romeo's, but then how does that influence our response to him as a character? Romeo, similarly to Tybalt, behaves in an impetuous manner and fights Tybalt, although this will cause more problems to him and Juliet, which it did, foreshadowing their deaths. Again, this is just plot. Tybalt knew that he shouldn't fight, as the prince said if they were to fight, he would kill them. That's not a real quotation. Who would be good if it was. However, Tybalt still did, and Romeo killed him. So just a little bit of a loss of focus in this last, I don't know what that shape is, in this last section here, not thinking about critically. Shakespeare uses Tybalt too. Shakespeare uses the conflict between Romeo and Tybalt to, who does the audience blame for this? How does this scene contribute to the overall feeling that Tybalt is a massively responsible for what happens? And then evaluate that. How much was fate responsible? How much is Romeo responsible? How much can we say Capulet is responsible, given what we know from the ball scene and given, this family feud started with him? This is something that Tybalt has been raised around. How much can he not be to blame for that? And how much does loyalty to his family help to sort of give us a different impression of him? So they're different things that they could have talked about to get into band 4 and band 5. This answer is band 3. I'm a little bit surprised by the spag mark. I didn't think it would be so high. However, good stuff. It is 4 marks, it's not 5, so that's good. But yeah, so this is, I hope you can see the difference here, that this one is a little bit too much narrative. There is some analysis of language, which does pop it into the higher part of band 3, but there's just not that thoughtfulness and there's not that continued focus on the question that you need to get into band 4. All right. So next up will be the poetry Mamet's Wood.